And on to our continuing focus here on World is One News. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to the Delhi airport to receive his Israeli counterpart this morning, who is the first Israeli Prime Minister to visit India in more than a decade. Prime Minister Modi hugged and shook hands with his Israeli counterpart, with whom he had developed a warm rapport during his visit to Israel last year. Netanyahu is accompanied by a 130-member-strong business delegation, and from the airport, both the leaders went to the Teen Murti Memorial to pay homage to the soldiers who died in Haifa during World War I. That ceremony marked the formal renaming of the Teen Murti Chowk as the Teen Murti Haifa Chowk. As a part of his second official engagement, then later in the day, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu met India's External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj. Both the leaders stressed on the emotional connect between India and Israel.
Feeling is mutual. We were eagerly looking forward to your visit, and after the visit of Prime Minister Modi, all of us were very excited to receive you in India. And today, that dream has come true.
Well, for us too, and for me personally.
Thank you so
much. All the people of Israel are watching this. Doubly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And one of the multiple facets of the growing relationship between India and Israel is that of defense relations. India is Israel's biggest arms market, buying around $1 billion worth of weapons every year. Israel's state-owned defense contractor Rafael announced on January 3rd that India had cancelled a $500 million order to buy its Spike anti-tank guided missiles. According to reports, India would instead opt for homemade anti-tank missiles. But despite that cancellation of the missile deal, India's defense ministry said this month it had cleared a plan worth $72 million to buy 131 Barak surface-to-air missiles built by Rafael. The two countries have grown closer since Narendra Modi took over as the Indian Prime Minister in 2014, thereby widening commercial cooperation beyond their long-standing defense ties. In July last year, Narendra Modi became the first Prime Minister from India to visit Israel in the last 70 years. That's not all. Deals for gas and oil cooperation, cyber security and agricultural products are all on the cards during that ongoing visit of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. After his visit to New Delhi, Netanyahu will later visit the iconic Taj Mahal in Agra, post which he will head to Ahmedabad and Mumbai. Meanwhile, there are also reports emerging that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will present a special gift to his Indian counterpart. He is reportedly going to gift Prime Minister Modi the Gal Mobile water desalinization and purification jeep. Back in June last year, Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi had waded into the Mediterranean Sea and rode the jeep on the coast during the latter's maiden visit to Israel. Now, Netanyahu is likely to gift the same jeep to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Very positive about it, because two countries who are already so friendly with each other, and the relationship is this cordial. This type of visit, Modi ji going there 6 months ago and their Prime Minister coming so soon, within 6 months, can only enhance the qualitative dimensions of this relationship to a much higher level, to even higher level. And this is to be welcomed. I think Indian people welcome it, and Israeli people also welcome it.
Let's go straight across now to my colleague, our international correspondent, Ramesh Ramachandran, who's been breaking down the key takeaways from that ongoing historic visit by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Good evening, Ramesh. As we take a closer look at the official engagements that the Israeli leader has so far had in New Delhi, one of the key takeaways that emerges is the words and the language that were used during his meeting with the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj just a short while back. The External Affairs Minister referring to this as a dream come true for India with the Israeli Prime Minister landing here and the Israeli leader also reciprocating the same kind of affection, something that many have spoken about, the warm connection between India and Israel.
Absolutely, Molly. Personal chemistry or public displays of affection were on full display between Prime Ministers Modi and Netanyahu, and afterwards between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Mr. Swaraj, India's foreign minister. And that, to my mind, is a good manifestation of the contemporary India-Israel relationship, warm, cordial, and forward-looking agenda for both principals when they meet in New Delhi tomorrow for bilateral talks. But that said, substantially from India's point of view, Molly, India is signaling its de-hyphenation of Israel-Palestine ties, thereby meaning that India will pursue ties with both Israel and Palestine independent of each other, and one relationship will not impinge on the other, so to speak. And that, to my mind, is a new element, so to speak, in India's engagement with countries in West Asia, given the fault lines that exist already in West Asia when we talk about countries such as Iran, Israel, Palestine, and the wider Arab world. But that said, besides personal chemistry, body language, and public displays of affection, there are more substantive issues at hand here, including but not limited to defense, security, cyber security, homeland security, science and technology, innovation, a big ticket item on the agenda of the two principals. Besides agriculture, water. Remember, Prime Minister Modi wants India to approach agriculture and water from a strategic perspective. Remember, he was, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, visited Israel, and he was taken in by Israel's advancement in the field of agriculture, drip irrigation, efficient use of water management, and so on. So he wants Israel to become a partner with India going forward in these two areas, in particular agriculture and water. So all in all, it's an all-encompassing relationship, multifaceted, multidimensional, and the exact elements or the contours of the talk will be known tomorrow when they meet here in New Delhi for bilaterals.
Right, stay with me, Ramesh. That's a host of issues that are on the agenda over the next 5 days as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu continues with his official engagements. But let's also play out for you a sample of what lies in store and what to expect during that visit, something that was shared with my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran by the Israeli ambassador to India, Daniel Carmen. He said that India and Israel share a rich and strong relationship, and also spoke about the multi-layers and dimensions to that relationship. Let's take a listen into that exclusive conversation.
May I begin by asking you, in terms of optics, have the cancellation of the Spike anti-tank missile or India's vote for the UNGA resolution come as a disappointment to Israel? Were you surprised at all by the decisions? And also, has Israel put those developments behind it ahead of the visit?
I would not want to comment specifically on those areas that you mentioned, because the relationship, and this will be reflected during the Prime Minister's visit, as all our relationship are reflected in the last few years by the fact that the relationship are larger than specific events. I don't want to mention specifically the cancellation of the Spike, because I would just tell you that there are processes that have take their time. What will be reflected during this visit is the fact that those relations are rich. They are all-weather relation. It's an all-weather relationship. Sometimes we have and we can speak, and we do speak all the time. We have a wonderful relationship on the governmental level. But I would like to add an ingredient that needs strengthening, and it will be strengthened, which is the involvement of the business community in these relations and the people-to-people connect. Experimenting the GAL mobile desalinating and water purifying vehicle. Minutes later, I said goodbye to the vehicle, because we have a vehicle that came here a couple of days ago, and it will be it will be gifted to Prime Minister Modi. We just took it out of the customs yesterday. We are sending it to Gujarat, and I think this will be a wonderful continuity of what started on the beach near Tel Aviv.
Ramesh, as the Israeli envoy put it during that exclusive conversation that you had with him, that relationships are larger than specific events, and that sentiment, that emotion perhaps comes to the forefront even when we talk about the Indian vote at the UNGA against Donald Trump's move to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And that's perhaps why, surprisingly, and as many also put it along expected lines at the same time, there seemed to be no dent at all when it comes to the Indian vote, hampering ties between the two countries. Many have been divided over why that did not really impact the relations between the two countries to the extent that many predicted.
Well, Molly, if you approach the developments that you mentioned dispassionately, then there can be no denying that the cancellation of the Spike anti-tank guided missile deal worth $500 million and India's vote for the UNGA resolution critical of Israel would have certainly come as a disappointment for Israel. But that said, the key phrase which stands out to my mind is all-weather relationship that the ambassador used to describe India-Israel relationship. And this particular phrase has a history and a specific connotation as far as India is concerned. Remember, this is a phrase which China often uses to describe its relationship with Pakistan. And to my mind, the use of this phrase by the Israeli ambassador to describe India-Israel ties will be debated for some time to come going forward, especially in light of the burgeoning ties between India and Israel, how it might impinge or impact India's ties with countries in its immediate neighborhood. But that said, the ambassador was at great pains to emphasize that India-Israel relationships stand on their own independent legs in terms of defense, security cooperation, people-to-people ties, government-to-government relations, business-to-business ties and investments. So all in all, things are only looking up, and both leaders can be expected to have a forward-looking agenda when they meet here tomorrow for bilaterals, especially, as I'm told, in the area of innovation, where Israel and India can expect to collaborate both at the government-to-government level as well as in the private sector collaboration, especially in terms of defense, agriculture, water, and science and technology.
All right, we're going to leave it there for the moment. Ramesh, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast with all of those perspectives on what lies ahead during that ongoing historic visit of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Just to take our viewers through what was a part of that crucial day as a part of day one of that ongoing visit. Immediately after Prime Minister Netanyahu's arrival in New Delhi, both the leaders arrived at the Teen Murti Memorial for a solemn ceremony. Both the leaders laid a wreath and signed the visitor's book. The ceremony marks the formal renaming of the Teen Murti Chowk as the Teen Murti Haifa Chowk. The three bronze statues at the Teen Murti represent the Hyderabad, Jodhpur and Mysore Lancers. They were a part of the 15 Imperial Service Cavalry Brigade. The brigade carried out the assault on Haifa on September 23rd in 1918 during World War I. The capture of Haifa cleared the route for the Allies to the city through the sea. 44 Indian soldiers were martyred during the liberation of the city during World War I. The 61 Cavalry celebrates 23rd September as the Haifa Day. And the relationship between India and Israel straddles not just defense, trade, cybersecurity, etc., but also interestingly, cinema. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah are big fans of Bollywood movies. So it comes as no surprise that during the Mumbai leg of his India visit, Prime Minister Netanyahu will be meeting Bollywood celebrities. But it seems the fascination with Bollywood is more for political reasons than personal. Here's why.
2 weeks ago, New Zealand singer Lorde decided to cancel her performance in Israel after appeals by pro-Palestinian activists. This was just one example of the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement against Israel. The movement is a global campaign attempting to increase pressure on Israel to stop oppression of Palestinians. The movement was founded in 2005 and has been backed by celebrities like Stephen Hawking, Angela Davis and Judith Butler. But as Israel fights cultural boycott, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is planning to meet the who's who of the Indian film industry in a special event called Shalom Bollywood in Mumbai. Netanyahu is expected to appeal to Bollywood to shoot films in Israel and offer tax breaks. This comes as no surprise as Bollywood films shot in foreign countries have boosted tourism significantly. Films like Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara was shot in Spain, and Kaho Na Pyar Hai, which was filmed in New Zealand, worked wonders to push tourism in those countries. In fact, cultural diplomacy between the two countries seems to already have taken off. Just last year, a song sequence for the soon-to-be-released Bollywood movie Drive was shot in Tel Aviv, marking the commencement of the association between Bollywood and Israel. And just last week, Bollywood stars Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt were in Israel for a recce of their upcoming action-adventure film. So, will Netanyahu be able to woo more Bollywood talent? And could the world's most prolific film industry be on its way to the Holy Land soon? Bureau Report, WION.
Moving on for now, though that remains our continuing focus, India and Iran seek to cement their strategic relationship in connectivity and infrastructure projects, including the development of the Chabahar port. Iran's transport minister, who was in New Delhi earlier this week for talks with the Indian ministers of transport, commerce and railways, spoke exclusively to WION's Ramesh Ramachandran. Here's a look.
Iran says that the development of Chabahar port with Indian assistance is coming along satisfactorily and that it remains on course to meet India's deadline of becoming fully operational by the end of this year.
We have discussed with one Indian company just for operation. Our negotiation is finalized. And I hope that we can sign it up an interim contract just in this January and hand in the port to them. So I'm very hopeful and very optimistic that we can operate with Indian company very soon.
President Hassan Rouhani of Iran inaugurated phase 1 of the Chabahar port project in December last year. India attaches strategic value in developing the port, not only in terms of enhancing connectivity with Afghanistan and beyond, but also to counter the Gwadar port leased by Pakistan to a Chinese company for 40 years.
We're a partner, not just co-workers, so it is very important for us as well just to see India as our partner in the region, so we are very sincere in this regard.
The India-Iran strategic collaboration extends to the development of railway infrastructure and sale and industrial production of locomotives too. An Indian state-owned company, Ircon International, has completed feasibility studies this month on building a railway line worth $1.2 billion linking Chabahar with Zahedan, which falls on the proposed international north-south transport corridor. And a $600 million deal for sale of 200 locomotives to Iran, which will entail setting up of a manufacturing facility in Iran going forward. India and Iran hope to insulate the infrastructure development projects from fluctuations in American policies towards Iran, especially President Donald Trump's reluctance to honor the Iran nuclear deal reached in 2015 among Iran, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, Germany and European Union.
I can assure from our side that certainly we are committed to the GCPOA, and also I'm very optimistic that the other parties are committed to this agreement. As you know that yesterday that we have an announcement from the European Ministers of Foreign Affairs. So although there is some propaganda from US, but however, so far you are saying that the other 5 countries are committed. So I don't think that the US can go alone. So I think US should follow the consensus of the world.
A high-level visit from Iran is expected to India later this year. Ramesh Ramachandran in New Delhi for WION.
And while some regions are still struggling to pick up pieces after war against ISIS, the streets of eastern Mosul are once again bustling with life. Here's more.
The streets of eastern Mosul once again bustling with life and noise. Once under Islamic State group control, residents of Iraq's second city were banned from practicing normal activities. But since the jihadists were driven out, night hours have gotten longer in the eastern part of the city. People can now go out, dine and shop freely.
It was as if someone was in a desert and cut off from everything. Then suddenly you get all these activities, amenities and all this entertainment that we were deprived from for 3 years. That's a long time.
Eastern Mosul saw less destruction than the western part of the city, which lies on the other side of the Tigris River. This restaurant opened in December. It's now packed with customers.
We struggled a lot, and 3 years of injustice and depression have passed. But now, thanks to God, we're making up for it. The situation has changed a lot. We're trying our best to improve.
Nearby, this billiard club is alive with music, table games and shisha. These activities were strictly forbidden under IS rule, punishable by lashes, prison and even execution. The establishment opened in May while the fighting was still raging in the western part of the city.
Young people are now having fun, thanks be to God. You see the cafes now are crowded and residents are comfortable and feeling safe. People have started to return. It's better than before. It's crowded wherever you go.
For these Mosul residents, a new life has begun, with no restrictions and no fear.